He thought he was just rescuing an abandoned dog for his little girl. He never imagined he was about to walk into a blind date, having accidentally stolen the one thing she thought she'd lost forever. This is Ethan, a single dad just trying to make his daughter smile. And this is Chloe, who spent the last week grieving, convinced her best friend was gone for good. Two strangers, one innocent mistake, and a blind date that's about to bring their worlds crashing together in the most unexpected way. What happened next would hinge entirely on a leash, a look, and a moment of shocking recognition. To understand how this impossible situation unfolded, you need to see the 48 hours leading up to that date. Two separate stories, running on a collision course neither saw coming. For Ethan, it started on a Thursday afternoon at Riverside Park. His 5-year-old daughter Sophie had been having a tough week, a bad cold, missing school, feeling cooped up. He promised her an adventure. The spring air was finally warm, and they took the long way through the wooded trails, Sophie chattering about the bugs and birds she saw. That's when they heard the whining. Tucked behind a cluster of rain-swollen shrubs, a beautiful golden retriever mix was lying on a frayed blanket, a half-empty bowl of water beside him. No owner in sight. The dog's tail thumped weakly at their approach. He wore a collar, but the tags were missing. Ethan scanned the perimeter, called out, waited. Nothing. The dog seemed clean, cared for, but utterly alone. Sophie's eyes went wide. "Daddy, he's lost. We can't leave him." It was the first rule of parenting. You can't undo that look of heartbreak on your child's face. He made a decision he believed was temporary, compassionate. He'd take the dog home, make some flyers, check for a microchip tomorrow. Sophie named him Sonny right there on the spot. Meanwhile, across town, Chloe was falling apart. Her dog, Cooper, had bolted from her backyard 6 days earlier after a delivery person left the gate unlatched. For Chloe, Cooper wasn't just a pet. He was the steady presence who got her through her father's long illness and passing the year before. The house echoed without him. She had plastered the neighborhood with 500 flyers, spent every waking hour calling shelters, checking online forums, walking familiar routes until her feet blistered. Hope was curdling into despair. Her friends urged her to take a break, to try and distract herself. One friend, Mia, was particularly insistent. "I set you up on a date weeks ago. It's tomorrow night. Just go. You need to be around people." Chloe resisted. The idea of making small talk while her heart was splintered felt impossible, disrespectful even. But Mia pleaded. "1 hour. If it's terrible, you leave. But you have to try to live a little for your own sake." Exhausted and hollow, Chloe finally relented. A blind date at the Courtyard Cafe at 7 p.m., a forced attempt at normalcy. Back at Ethan's apartment, the temporary dog was making himself at home. Sonny followed Sophie everywhere, slept at the foot of her bed, and was surprisingly well trained. Ethan checked all the local lost pet websites and found nothing that matched. A visit to the vet the next day confirmed no microchip. The vet's advice was pragmatic. "You've done the right thing by looking. Sometimes people abandon dogs. If you can't find the owner in a reasonable time, you can consider rehoming," or he didn't finish. Sophie, who had overheard, burst into tears. "Sonny is my dog now. You can't send him away." Ethan was trapped between practicality and his daughter's radiant, newfound joy. The flyers he put up got no calls. By Saturday morning, the idea of Sonny as a permanent family member was starting to feel less like a crisis and more like fate. Chloe's Saturday was spent in a numb haze. She refreshed lost pet websites compulsively, her phone clutched in her hand. As the hour of the date approached, a deep resentment settled in. She didn't want to go, she wanted to be looking for Cooper, but she had promised Mia. She chose a simple sweater, ran a brush through her hair, and felt like she was dressing for a funeral. The only thought that propelled her out the door was Mia's voice, "You have to try to live." Ethan, too, was preparing for a date, his first in over a year. His sister had been nagging him to get back out there. "His name is Ben, he's nice, he loves dogs, just meet him for coffee." To simplify the evening, he'd arranged for Sophie to have a sleepover at her cousin's. As he got ready, he felt a pang of guilt leaving Sonny alone. At the last minute, he made another decision. "Bring him," the text from Ben had said. "I'd love to meet him." It seemed like a good sign. So Ethan clipped the leash onto the dog's collar, the one he'd replaced the missing tags with, and headed out. He was nervous, hopeful for a connection, and completely unaware that the dog walking beside him held the shattered heart of the woman he was about to meet. Chloe arrived first, choosing a table near the cafe's entrance, her back to the door. She ordered a tea she didn't want and stared at her hands. Ethan arrived 5 minutes later, Sonny trotting calmly beside him. He scanned the room, looking for a man matching Ben's description. He didn't see him. But as he stood there, leash in hand, a woman at the table by the door turned. It wasn't a glance. It was a full-body freeze. Her eyes locked not on Ethan, but on the dog. Her teacup hit the saucer with a sharp clatter. Her hand flew to her mouth. And then a sound escaped her, a gasp, a sob, a name choked with disbelief. Cooper. Ethan looked down at Sonny, then back at the stunned woman now rising to her feet. His brain slowly, horrifyingly began to connect the dots. The blind date, the missing dog, the woman weeping before him. In that suspended second, as Chloe dropped to her knees with her arms outstretched, Ethan realized his innocent rescue mission was over, and a confrontation he never imagined was just beginning. In the echoing silence that followed Chloe's cry, two realities shattered and rebuilt themselves in an instant. For Chloe, it was a miracle. For Ethan, it was the beginning of a nightmare. Chloe was on the floor in an instant, her arms around the dog's neck, burying her face in his fur as he wriggled and licked her face, whining with excitement. She was sobbing, whispering, "Cooper, oh my God, Cooper, I thought I lost you," over and over. Every other person in the cafe had stopped. The barista was frozen, a mug in hand. The couple at the next table stared openly. Ethan stood like a statue, the leash hanging limply from his hand, his mind racing through a terrifying calculus, the missing tags, the lack of a chip, his daughter's radiant face when she named him Sonny. He had stolen this woman's dog. The thought was a physical blow. "I'm so sorry," he blurted out, his voice tight. "I found him. I thought he was abandoned. I looked for an owner, I swear." Chloe looked up, tears streaming down her face, but her expression had shifted from pure joy to a dawning, furious confusion. She registered the leash in his hand, his presence, the context of this meeting. "What are you doing with my dog?" Her voice was low, dangerous. "And how do you know Ben?" It was Ethan's turn to be confused. "Ben, I'm here to meet Ben, my date." Chloe stared at him, her brain visibly catching up. The setup from her friend Mia, the blind date. The man was supposed to love dogs. Her eyes widened in horrified understanding. "You're Ethan," he nodded, numb. "And you brought my dog on our date." The absurdity of it, the cruelty of the cosmic joke, hit her like a wave. She let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "This isn't happening." Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket, a text from his sister. "Ben just called. He's stuck at work, running super late. He says to order him an Americano and he'll be there in 20. Sorry." He showed the screen to Chloe, a silent offering of proof for this one, small part of the chaos. She barely glanced at it. All her focus was on Cooper, her hands running over his body as if checking for injury. The dog, for his part, was ecstatic, torn between the familiar, beloved scent of Chloe and the new, kind man who had given him food and shelter. "We need to talk," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not here." Chloe nodded stiffly, her arms still wrapped protectively around Cooper. They moved to a secluded corner table, the dog settling at Chloe's feet, his head on her shoe. The cafe's normal chatter slowly resumed around them, a bubble of surreal normalcy enclosing their personal earthquake. The story spilled out in fractured pieces. Chloe described the unlatched gate, the 6 days of frantic searching, the 500 flyers, the hollow agony. Ethan described the park, the blanket, the bowl, his daughter's pleading eyes. He showed her the photos on his phone, Sophie asleep with the dog, the two of them playing in his living room. With every image, Chloe's face tightened. This wasn't just a man who'd found a lost pet. This was a father who had, with the best intentions, given her dog a new name and a new home in the heart of a child. "She calls him Sonny," Ethan said softly and watched Chloe flinch. "She's 5. She's had a rough time. This dog, he lit up her whole world. He was digging his own grave and he knew it, but the truth felt like the only currency he had left." Chloe listened, her anger cooling into a hard, sharp dread. The legalities were clear, he had her property. The moral landscape was a minefield. "I need him back," Chloe said, her voice trembling but firm. "Tonight, he's my family." Ethan felt a surge of panic. "My daughter is at her cousin's. She's coming home tomorrow morning expecting to see him. If he's just gone," he couldn't finish the sentence. The image of Sophie's heartbreak was paralyzing. What if we figure this out gradually? You come over, meet her, we explain he has another home too." It was a desperate, naive offer. Chloe's expression told him everything. "You want me to share my dog after you took him? After I've been grieving for a week?" The conversation spiraled. Voices rose, then were hastily lowered. Competing pains collided, the pain of loss versus the pain of impending loss. Then came the pivot, the moment that reframed everything. In her agitation, Chloe pulled out her own phone, swiping to a photo to show Ethan what Cooper looked like before. It was a picture of the two of them on a hiking trail, and there, clear as day on Cooper's collar in the photo, were his tags. See, he had them. A blue bone-shaped tag with his name and my number, and a rabies tag from the Clark Street vet. Ethan stared. The dog he found had no tags. Someone had removed them. The narrative of an innocent abandonment crumbled. The bowl and blanket now looked less like someone sadly leaving a pet and more like a staging. The dog had been stolen first, then dumped. The revelation landed between them like a live wire. Chloe's face went pale. Someone took his tags off. They stole him and then they left him. The horror of it, that Cooper had been taken, not just lost, added a new layer of violation, but it also absolved Ethan of the worst interpretation. He wasn't a thief. He was the second link in a chain of someone else's crime. The anger in Chloe's eyes softened, just a fraction, replaced by a consuming dread about what Cooper might have been through. This changed everything, and yet it changed nothing about the core problem. Cooper was still here. Sophie was still waiting. The clock was ticking. They settled on a temporary, fragile truce. Chloe would come to Ethan's apartment the next morning. She would see where Cooper had been living. They would try somehow to explain this to Sophie together. It was a terrible plan, but it was the only one they had. They exchanged numbers, a transaction that felt both necessary and grotesque. Chloe clipped her own leash onto Cooper's collar, a leash she'd carried in her bag every day since he disappeared, and led him out of the cafe. Ethan watched them go, the dog not looking back, and felt the ground disappear beneath him. He drove home to an empty, silent apartment that still smelled of dog. The cheerful chaos of the last 2 days was gone, replaced by the ghost of impending disaster. He couldn't sleep. He rehearsed explanations to a 5-year-old that made no sense even to him. At 2 in the morning, his phone lit up. A message from Chloe. It wasn't anger. It was a photo. Cooper, curled on what was clearly her bed, sleeping peacefully. Underneath, a simple text. "Thank you for keeping him safe." It was a gesture of grace that cracked Ethan's defensive shell wide open. He typed and deleted a dozen replies before settling on, "I'm so sorry for all of it. See you tomorrow." The morning arrived, harsh and bright. Ethan picked up a subdued Sophie from her cousin. "Where's Sonny?" were her first words. "He's at home, sweetheart," Ethan said, his stomach in knots. "We have a friend coming to meet him." Sophie, thrilled by the idea of a visitor, chatted the whole way home, oblivious to the storm in her father's eyes. They arrived at the apartment. Sophie ran inside, calling for Sonny. The silence that answered her was the first clue. Her smile faltered. The doorbell rang. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. This was it. He opened the door. Chloe stood there, Cooper straining at the leash beside her. And behind Ethan, Sophie's small voice, filled with confused delight, called out the name that would break both adults' hearts. "Sonny, you're back." She pushed past her father and threw her arms around the dog. Then she looked up, saw the strange woman holding the leash, and her smile turned uncertain. "Daddy, who's that?" In the doorway of a small apartment, a 5-year-old's innocent question hung in the air, holding the weight of 2 conflicting worlds. What happened next wouldn't just be about returning a dog. It would force 3 people to build a bridge across a chasm of grief, guilt, and a little girl's boundless love. Ethan knelt down, putting himself at Sophie's level. "Sweetheart, this is Chloe, and this is Cooper." Sophie's brow furrowed, her small hand still resting on the dog's head. "No, Daddy, this is Sonny." Chloe's heart broke a little at the certainty in the girl's voice. She forced a gentle smile. "Hey, Sophie, your dad told me you've been taking such good care of him. Thank you for that." Sophie, shy but proud, nodded. "He sleeps in my room." The dog, blissfully unaware of the tension, wagged his tail, nuzzling Sophie's hand and then leaning against Chloe's leg. He was the living, breathing connection between them, utterly confused about which human to attend to first. Ethan invited Chloe inside. The apartment told a story. Sophie's drawings were taped to the fridge. A well-worn dog bed sat in the corner of the living room next to a basket of toys, a mix of old, chewed-up ones Chloe recognized and new ones she didn't. A pink leash hung by the door. Seeing her dog's life seamlessly integrated here, cared for and loved, was a second shock. It wasn't a kennel, it was a home. They sat on the floor because that's where Sophie was. Ethan began the impossible explanation. "Sophie, remember how we found Sunny in the park, and we looked for his family?" Sophie nodded. "Well, we found her. This is Chloe. Sunny's real name is Cooper, and he's Chloe's best friend. He got lost, and she's been so sad without him." Sophie's eyes darted between her father and Chloe, processing. The concept of a dog having a previous owner, a whole other life, was new and troubling. "He lives with us now," she said, her voice small. Chloe spoke softly. "He does, and you gave him a wonderful home when he needed one. You were his hero." She meant it. The anger from the cafe was gone, replaced by a profound gratitude mixed with her own aching need. "But my house is very quiet without him. I miss him every single day. He has a big backyard to run in, and his favorite squirrel he likes to bark at." She was selling her home to a 5-year-old, and it felt surreal. Sophie's lower lip began to tremble. The reality was dawning. "Is he going away?" she whispered. Ethan looked at Chloe, a silent plea in his eyes. Chloe took a deep breath. The legal right was hers. The emotional calculus was monstrous. "I think," Chloe said carefully, "that Cooper is a very lucky dog because he has two people who love him so much. Maybe he could visit sometimes." It was a lifeline, thrown from a place of desperate empathy. Ethan looked at her with stunned gratitude. Sophie latched onto it. Like a sleepover, the idea transformed the loss into an adventure. "Yeah," Chloe said, her voice thick. "Like a sleepover." They crafted a fragile, temporary story for Sophie. Cooper had two homes. He was going back to his first home with Chloe, but he would come to visit his second home with Sophie. It was a fairy tale, a band-aid on a wound, but it allowed Sophie to say goodbye without utter devastation. She helped pack Sunny's new toys into a bag for him to take. She gave Chloe a detailed list of his favorite snacks. The transaction was heartbreaking in its innocence. When it was time to leave, Sophie hugged the dog fiercely, whispering secrets into his fur. Then she hugged Chloe, surprising them both. "Take good care of Sunny Cooper," she said, mangling the name into a new joint identity. Chloe promised she would. As she clipped the leash on and walked out the door, Cooper trotted beside her without a backward glance. Ethan held a sobbing Sophie in the doorway, watching them go. The apartment, once filled with joyful chaos, felt like a tomb. For Chloe, the triumph of reunion was bittersweet. Cooper was ecstatic to be home. He raced through the familiar rooms, barking at his favorite window. But as she put the bag of new toys next to his old ones, Chloe felt a strange pang. The evidence of his other life was sitting in her living room. She looked at the photo of Sophie that Ethan had texted her, a little girl with a gap-toothed smile, cuddled up with the dog. The villain in this story had dissolved, leaving behind two good people in an impossible situation. The agreed-upon visit was scheduled for the following weekend, but in the days in between, the digital world intervened, creating the wait, it gets worse moment that would escalate everything beyond their control. Ethan, in an attempt to find closure and do one last good deed, had posted in a local community Facebook group at the start of the week. His post read, "Found, sweet golden mix in Riverside Park. No tags, no chip. We've grown attached, but want to be sure we did everything to find his family." He included a photo. He'd been too distracted by the date and the subsequent fallout to check it again. Chloe, meanwhile, posted her own update in the same group and on her neighborhood page. "Miracle, Cooper is home. Thank you to everyone who looked, shared, and prayed. A kind stranger found him and cared for him. My heart is whole again." She posted a reunion photo from her living room. The algorithm did its work. Members of the overlapping group saw both posts. The timeline was clear. Ethan's found dog was Chloe's lost Cooper, but the narrative they constructed was not one of cosmic coincidence and hard choices. It was one of deception. Comments began to pop up on Ethan's old post, now dredged back to the top of the feed. Isn't this Chloe's dog Cooper? This guy had the dog for days while she was posting everywhere. He said he grew attached. Looks like he wasn't trying too hard to find the owner." The digital mob, armed with incomplete information and righteous indignation, was mobilizing. Ethan's phone began to buzz with notifications, angry comments, private messages demanding he explain himself. A screenshot of his grown attached post was circulating on Chloe's thread, painting him as a potential dog thief with a change of heart. He was being digitally pilloried. Panicked, he called Chloe. Have you seen the Facebook stuff?" She had. Her joy had been soured by a flood of messages warning her about the sketchy guy who'd kept her dog. "They don't understand," she said, frustrated. "I told them you're not like that, but the genie was out of the bottle." Then a new comment appeared, a bomb disguised as a question. It was from a user named River Park Watch. The comment read, "I walk my dog in Riverside every day. Saw that golden with a man last Tuesday afternoon before the found post. He wasn't on a blanket, he was on a leash. The man looked nervous, just saying." The implication was explosive. Ethan hadn't found an abandoned dog, he'd been the one to take it. The story had now escalated from a misunderstanding to a potential crime. Ethan read the comment with a cold dread. It was a lie, but a plausible one to anyone looking for a villain. His reputation in his own community was being shredded. He screenshot it and sent it to Chloe. "This is insane. This isn't true." Chloe believed him. The story of the blanket and bowl was too specific, too odd to fabricate, but the damage was done. The online pressure was morphing into real-world consequences. He received a call from his daughter's school, asking gently if everything was all right at home after a parent had mentioned disturbing online activity. His world was contracting under a cloud of suspicion. Chloe made a public post defending him. "Please stop. Ethan is a good man who saved my dog. The situation is complicated and personal, and we are handling it privately. Thank you for your concern, but respect our privacy." It helped, but not enough. The narrative of secret wrongdoing was more compelling than one of nuanced, painful choice. The planned visit was now under a microscope. What if someone saw Cooper at Ethan's apartment and called the police, thinking he'd stolen the dog again? They met in person at a neutral playground this time. The stress was etched on both their faces. "This is a nightmare," Ethan said, his voice hollow. "I can't have this follow Sophie to school." Chloe agreed. "Cooper's home, he's safe, that's all that matters to me. But these visits, they might make things worse for you and for her." She was offering him a way out, releasing him from their fragile agreement. It was the right thing to do, the clean thing. But Ethan thought of Sophie's face, counting down the sleeps until she saw Sonny Cooper again. He couldn't take that from her, not after everything. "No," he said, surprising himself. "We made a promise to her. We have to try, but we need to be smarter." They became co-conspirators, planning the handoff like a spy exchange. They'd meet in a different town's dog park early on Sunday mornings. No social media posts, no explanations to anyone. It was ridiculous and necessary. In their shared siege mentality, something shifted. The kind stranger and the grieving owner were gone. In their place were Ethan and Chloe, two people battered by the same storm, trying to protect a child and a dog from the fallout. The first exchange was awkward. Sophie, however, was pure joy. She raced around the dog park with Cooper, her laughter cutting through the morning fog. Ethan and Chloe sat on a bench watching. "She really loves him," Chloe said. "He really loved you first," Ethan replied. They talked not about the dog but about other things, about raising kids alone, about bad dates, about the ridiculousness of the Facebook comments. Chloe mentioned her father and how Cooper had helped her through that loss. Ethan talked about the divorce, about wanting to build a stable, happy world for Sophie. The wall between them, built from conflict, was slowly becoming a bridge made of shared understanding. After an hour, it was time. Sophie, prepared this time, gave Cooper a kiss and handed the leash to Chloe. "Bye, Sonny Cooper, see you next time." There were tears, but they were manageable. As Chloe walked away, Ethan felt a strange emptiness that wasn't just about the dog. He realized with a jolt that he was looking forward to next Sunday, not just for Sophie, but for another conversation on a park bench. This was the new, unstable equilibrium, a secret shared custody arrangement of a golden retriever and the slow, unpredictable blossoming of a connection between two people who met in the worst possible way. But life is never content with equilibrium. The fragile peace they'd built was about to be tested by the one person whose feelings they hadn't fully reckoned with, the original blind date who never showed up. And his return would force Ethan and Chloe to answer the question they'd been avoiding. What exactly were they building here? The text from Ben was a lit match thrown into the delicate arrangement they'd built. It forced a question they'd been dancing around for weeks. Were they just co-conspirators in a shared custody agreement, or was this becoming something neither of them had the courage to name? Ben's message to Ethan was polite but pointed. "Hey man, I know I flaked on that first date and I'm really sorry. Work was insane, but I've been seeing some stuff around the neighborhood, and are you and Chloe dating now? Just curious. No hard feelings either way." The subtext was clear. He felt sidelined. The digital grapevine had done its work, reporting sightings of Ethan, Chloe, a kid, and a dog at various parks. The secret was out, and it looked like a relationship. Ethan showed Chloe the text. They were at their usual Sunday park bench, watching Sophie and Cooper attempt to dig a hole to China. A heavy silence settled between them. The fiction of their platonic logistical partnership was crumbling under the weight of simple observation. "What do we tell him?" Ethan asked. Chloe stared at her hands. "The truth, that we're friends because of the dog, that it's complicated." But even as she said it, the word friends felt insufficient. Friends didn't feel a flutter of anticipation every Sunday morning. Friends didn't save funny memes to share with each other. Friends didn't notice, with a pang, how natural the other looked playing with a child. They decided on a joint response, a show of unity. Ethan typed while Chloe looked over his shoulder. "Ben, really appreciate you reaching out. The situation with the dog created a really unique and complicated connection. Chloe and I are figuring things out day by day. It wasn't anything planned, and we genuinely hope there's no awkwardness. All the best, Ethan and Chloe." It was a masterpiece of non-answer, but it felt honest. Ben sent back a thumbs-up emoji. The immediate threat receded, but the question it raised echoed between them, louder than before. The dynamic shifted after that. The unacknowledged tension became a third presence on their park benches. Conversations grew more personal, more vulnerable. Chloe talked about her fear of never moving past her grief, of building a life that felt too small. Ethan confessed his anxiety about being a good enough father, his loneliness in the years since his divorce. One rainy Sunday, when the park was empty, they sat in Ethan's car, sharing a coffee while Sophie napped in the backseat. Chloe said quietly, "I never thanked you properly for not fighting me for him. Most people would have." Ethan shook his head. "How could I? You were his whole world. We were just a pit stop." Chloe looked at him, her eyes soft. It didn't feel like a pit stop to Sophie or to Cooper. He's happy here too. It was the closest they'd come to acknowledging the new reality. Cooper, now answering to both names, had seamlessly split his heart. He'd greet Chloe with frantic full-body wiggles and then trot to Sophie, dropping a toy at her feet. He had two homes, and he was content in both. The dog had become a bridge, and they were slowly, cautiously walking across it. The true test came on a Tuesday evening, completely out of the blue. Ethan was at work, and Sophie was at an after-school club. His phone rang. It was Chloe, and she was crying, not gentle tears but ragged, panicked sobs. "It's Cooper," she choked out. "He got out of the yard again. The gate, I don't know how. He's gone." The old terror was back in her voice, sharp and paralyzing. Ethan didn't hesitate. "I'm leaving work now. Text me your address. We'll find him." He was in his car, heart hammering with a fear that felt strangely familial, within 10 minutes. He arrived at Chloe's house, a cozy bungalow with a fenced yard. She was on the porch, her face pale, clutching her phone. Without a word, they fell into a search pattern born of terrible experience. Ethan took the car, cruising slowly through adjacent neighborhoods. Chloe went on foot, calling Cooper's name until her voice was hoarse. They texted updates every few minutes, a possible sighting, a dead end, a growing dread. After 2 hours, Ethan had a thought. He drove to Riverside Park, to the exact cluster of shrubs where he'd first found the dog. And there he was. Cooper lying on the ground, not on a blanket this time, but looking anxiously toward the path. As if waiting, he saw Ethan, stood up, wagged his tail tentatively. Ethan's breath caught. The dog hadn't just run away, he'd gone back to the place where his two worlds had collided. He called Chloe, his voice thick with emotion. "I've got him, he's okay, he's at the park." When Chloe arrived, sprinting down the path on her still blistered feet, she collapsed next to Cooper, holding him and crying with relief. Then she looked up at Ethan, who was kneeling beside them. "He came back here," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "He didn't run away from something. He was trying to find something or someone." In that moment, the dog's instinct felt like a message, a push. They sat together on the damp grass as the sun set. The crisis had stripped away the last of their defenses. "I can't do this alone," Chloe said, not just meaning the search, but everything, the grief, the quiet house, the fear. "You don't have to," Ethan replied, and he wasn't just talking about the dog. He reached for her hand. She laced her fingers through his, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. That night changed everything. They ordered pizza at Chloe's house, Sophie chattering excitedly about the adventure of finding Sonny Cooper. The atmosphere was different, warmer, easier. Sophie asked if she could have a sleepover at Chloe's house soon with the dog. Chloe said yes instantly, then looked at Ethan for confirmation. He just smiled and nodded. They were making decisions as a unit. The shared custody of the dog became a shared life, in gradual, gentle increments. Chloe started joining them for Saturday morning pancakes at a diner, becoming a fixture in their weekend ritual. Ethan and Sophie helped her plant flowers in her backyard, with Cooper supervising. They became a familiar trio plus dog at the local farmer's market. The online gossip died down, replaced by a new narrative, the cute story of the guy, the girl, and the dog that brought them together. 6 months after that first fateful date at the Courtyard Cafe, they were at the same park on their usual bench. Sophie was in school, so it was just the two of them and Cooper. The leaves were turning. Ethan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You know, we never actually had a first date." Chloe smiled. "I think we've had about 50 first dates, all of them weird." He took a breath. "How about we make it official then? A real, planned, no-dog drama-involved date, just you and me." Chloe's smile widened. "I'd like that." But life had one final, surprising detail to reveal. A few weeks later, a man approached Chloe in her front yard as she was unloading groceries. He was an older neighbor from a few streets over, looking sheepish. "Miss," he said, "I have to confess something about your dog." Chloe's blood ran cold. The man explained that his own dog, a rambunctious puppy, had gotten loose and charged at Cooper months ago during a walk. In the tussle, Cooper's collar had snapped, and the tags had flown off into a storm drain. The man, embarrassed and not thinking clearly, had taken the collar, intending to buy a replacement and return it, but then he'd heard Cooper was missing and was too ashamed to come forward. He'd finally been eaten up by guilt. He handed her a brand new collar, with new tags, and a $50 bill for her trouble. The mystery of the missing tags was solved. It wasn't malice, it was a fluke accident followed by cowardice. The last shadow of the theft narrative vanished, replaced by a mundane human mistake. Ethan and Chloe's first official date was, ironically, at the Courtyard Cafe. They laughed about the absurdity of it. This time, there was no shock, no tears, just easy conversation and the quiet certainty of two people who had found their way to each other through a series of wrong turns. A year after the blind date that wasn't, Ethan and Sophie moved into the cozy bungalow with the fenced yard. Cooper had his whole family under one roof, and Sophie finally got her sleepover every single night. They got married in the same park where it all began, with Cooper as the ring bearer, a blue bone-shaped tag gleaming on his collar. Sophie was the flower girl, scattering petals with gleeful abandon. It wasn't a story that started with love at first sight. It started with a lost dog, a blind date gone wrong, and a little girl's act of kindness. It was messy and complicated, and built piece by piece from fragments of grief, guilt, and unexpected grace. In the end, Ethan didn't just get his daughter a dog, he found a partner. Chloe didn't just get her best friend back, she found a family, and a dog named Cooper, or Sonny, depending on who you asked, got the biggest pack of all. So what do we make of a story that began with a mistake, a loss, and a blind date that went impossibly wrong? It would be easy to call it a cute mate cute, a lucky accident, but to do that would miss the entire point. The truth is, there were a dozen moments where this story could have, and maybe should have, ended. When Ethan could have left the dog in the park, when Chloe could have called the police at the cafe, when the online mob could have destroyed Ethan's standing in his community, when pride or pain could have made them both walk away for good. This wasn't about luck. It was about a series of conscious, difficult choices. The choice to be kind when it was inconvenient. The choice to listen when you wanted to defend. The choice to extend trust when every instinct screamed to retreat. The choice to see the human behind the conflict. We often talk about fate or destiny in stories like these, as if some invisible hand guided them together. But maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe it's about the quiet courage of everyday people choosing empathy over ego again and again, until a bridge forms across what seemed like an uncrossable divide. Ethan and Chloe didn't find love because of a dog. They built it piece by piece, through shared responsibility, through protecting a child's heart, through showing up in each other's moments of panic and grief. The dog was just the bridge. They were the ones who decided to walk across. Their story leaves us with a lingering question. one that applies far beyond lost pets and missed connections. How many times in our own lives have we faced a difficult moment, a conflict, an awkward situation, and chosen the easy exit instead of the messy, complicated path of understanding? How many potential connections, friendships, loves, profound partnerships have we missed because we weren't willing to sit in the discomfort of a misunderstood beginning? The world isn't short on chaos, on missed signals, on painful accidents, but it is in those very fractures that light sometimes gets in. It's in the repair that something stronger than the original can be built. Ethan, Chloe, Sophie, and Cooper are a living testament to that. A family forged not from a perfect beginning, but from a beautifully mended one. Their story reminds us that sometimes the most extraordinary chapters of our lives start with a sentence we never meant to write, and that the best response to life's unexpected plot twists isn't always to shut the book, but to turn the page with an open heart. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of an unexpected turn in your own life, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that good things can grow from complicated starts. And subscribe for more real stories about the messy, beautiful ways we find each other. Thanks for listening.